All right, hey folks, in this video I'm going to go through a review of the MYP design cycle so that we can review it and understand it more deeply and connect it to the project that we're about to begin. So if you remember, as we've gone throughout the semester here, we have used the design cycle, which is a problem-solving process really to its core, right? It allows us to streamline the way we research about a topic, come up with some ideas or sketches that help us see what we plan to do, and then make something and figure out whether or not it solved our problem or achieved our goal. So what I'm going to do now, though, is go into a little bit more depth about each of the sections of the design cycle, the strands or the smaller language on the outer circle, right? We want to make sure that we understand each of those as skills that can help us solve a problem and be used in various ways to achieve a goal. So if we begin with the blue section, inquiring and analyzing, right? Criterion A. Each section has 4 strands and they're numbered with small Roman numerals. So if we look at strand 1, which says explain and justify the need, what we're really thinking about there is, do we fully understand what the problem is that we're trying to work towards or solve? And do we know that it needs a solution, right? Is there a reason why it should be addressed? When we move into strand 2, that's where we need to find out a little bit more about our topic, perhaps about our audience, or the possibilities that exist for this challenge. In strand 3, we want to look at some other solutions in the world that are similar to what we're thinking about working on, okay? So if we were going to make a new smartphone, for example, we would probably start by looking at iPhones and Samsung Galaxies, and we would quickly find out through our research that Galaxies are far superior to iPhones, of course. And then finally, in the design brief section, we haven't worked a lot with those this year, but a design brief is essentially a summary paragraph that explains to the person who you are designing for what will be done, how it will be done, what sorts of features it will include, when it will be accomplished. It's that real summary idea. If we move into Criterion B, developing ideas, the first strand in this section is to develop design specifications, and that really is where you as the designer get to tell the world what your product will be like, what sorts of things will it include, what sorts of things will it be able to do, what sorts of things will it not have or do, okay? And you also get to talk a little bit about the quality or degree to which it can do those things. You are the designer, so it's your creation, and you have to specify what those things will be. Next, and we've done this several times this year, we're going to draw out different ideas, right? And we want to not just focus on one idea. We want to come up with a range of different ideas so that if we get stuck or cornered somewhere along our process, we have some other ideas to maybe draw some solutions from. Okay, if we just stick to one idea, we also may be forgetting or not considering some things that are possible. Next, we want to choose one of those ideas and explain to the world why we feel like that is the best option. And it should connect to those specifications we made, right? If we said it was going to be able to do this thing, the reason why we chose this option should also show that it is capable of doing that thing. And finally, what we want to do is move from a sketch to a much more accurate or detailed drawing or model, okay? So that we can start to show maybe proportionally or to scale what it might look like, or in 3D what it might look like, or with measured dimensions what it will look like, or annotations that show the purposes of each area or thing. Next, we'll move into the creating phase where we actually start making a prototype or a rough draft of our product. Okay, we want to start with a plan where we identify how long we will work on each part, which days will we begin each section of work, what kinds of materials will we need along the way. Maybe that's also where, if we're working in a collaborative team, we can delegate and identify who's going to be doing each part of the work. Demonstrating excellent technical skills means that you are working carefully with tools that are used appropriately and skillfully, and you're making sure that things are clean looking, finished, symmetrical, usable, all of those sorts of things. In Strand 3, we should be nearing the end of our prototype or our creation and be able to show the world or present it to whomever is going to be sort of evaluating it first. And then in Strand 4, we also want to justify any changes that we've made. So if we started with a plan and what we've created looks differently than that, or it functions differently than that, we want to explain why we had to make those changes. Sometimes that happens because we didn't have access to certain materials, or they were too expensive, or certain pieces didn't fit together the way we were intending them to, or we just found a better idea and it worked in a way that allowed us to move forward. Sorry, clicked the wrong way there. In the final phase, evaluating, we're going to look at the success of how we did. So we want to explain, sorry, and Strand 1's on the bottom here, gather feedback based on your specifications. So we want to explain how we're going to test it, right? And then go through with actually testing it. In Strand 2, we're going to use those specifications that we wanted to accomplish and say whether it does or does not do each of those things and how well. With Strand 3, explain how it could be improved. Maybe we have some new ideas along the way as we were working, or maybe we have some access to new things now that we can move from a prototype to a final working product. And then the final step of the evaluating phase, Strand 4 here says, what is the potential impact on the target audience? How will this benefit the people we intended to make something for? In what ways will it achieve its goals? Okay, so reviewing all those steps, what we want to do in this project, though, is take our design targets on a larger scale. We want to not just think about one particular target audience or one scenario or country that it exists in. We want to broaden our view out to the whole world and see if there are problems out there that we can solve for groups of people, or that will benefit many more than just a small group. And remember, at the core of our design effort, we always want to remember that we're designing for humans. We're designing for people who will use our products, who will benefit from them, maybe become more healthy or educated, or treated more justly or fairly, any of those sorts of things, right? So keep your focus on people at the center of our work, so that we never lose sight of the fact that we want it to be beneficial to others, okay? And that'll help us keep empathy at the heart of how we're working, remembering that somebody else is intended to use this and benefit from it. Okay, so with all that review of the design cycle, that brings us to again to the statement of inquiry and concepts that we had went over in 4.0. And remember that our statement of inquiry is entrepreneurs innovate by understanding and developing community resources based on its needs. So we're going to focus in on communities, okay? And again, the slide before about taking our vision to a global scale, communities exist at various levels, right? And we've done projects like our prosthetic project, where we focused in on a certain group of people who may have experienced a loss of a limb. We've focused in on communities like the North Minneapolis community, or a city setting in our building design project. With sustainable energy, we did a lot of focus on states in the United States, and towards the end of that project, we also looked a little bit at countries around the world. But really now we're going to go to a bigger scale, and so we're going to use what are called the Sustainable Development Goals from the United Nations, right? And the United Nations is sort of a collaborative of almost 200 countries around the world to achieve certain outcomes. All right, so along the way also, we're going to think about how can we innovate, how can we use things in new ways or come up with ideas that haven't yet been applied. We're going to develop those ideas. We're going to think about, maybe designing a couple of different options or phases of the prototype to make it better along the way. And we're going to do that through the lens of entrepreneurs or people who have taking the initiative themselves to start a business or start a nonprofit organization or work towards a cause or use their own skills and motivation in order to bring something to the world. All right, and to wrap up here, then we'll be spending more time on these in the coming days here, but these are the 17 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So you see there are things like ending poverty and hunger, making sure that there's gender equality and quality education for all, things related to the environment and pollution, making sure that businesses can be successful and good infrastructure exists for the world, and even things like peace and justice, right? So as we move into the rest of this project, we're going to talk about these more, learn more about some examples of what they could be, and hopefully find a topic here that you might be passionate about or interested in that you can apply the design cycle to. So where that leaves us in the next step then is we're going to use this document as a strengths and opportunities reflection. So what I've got here is those same pictures that you just saw in this video and all the language of the design cycle from our rubrics for each strand. And as a reflection, I want you to think about how have we done this so far this year? What things have we done in our different projects to use each of these strands and criteria? And then I want you to think also about how have you performed in each of those sections. And what you might find is that perhaps you're really good at developing ideas and maybe you need a little bit of work still in inquiring and analyzing. And this will help you then identify areas for growth so that you can target those skills and show us that growth and really improve your understanding and use of the design cycle and your overall scores for the course. All right, and then as we go through the other two sections here, you see the same sort of thing, and then there are those couple of reflection questions towards the end here. So, all right, that ends the video here.